Whatever the setbacks of the moment, nothing can stop us now. Whatever the difficulties, Africa shall be at peace. However improbable it may sound to the skeptics, Africa will prosper.
More than anything, Unisa must be celebrated as a pioneer of the distance education model, an enduring gift not only to South Africa, the continent, but to the human civilization in the knowledge arena the world over.
Education is the light in a dark room. It's the spark of a dream, a passport to the future, and the seed of generational change. Through education, we reflect on yesterday and define tomorrow. Rooted in South Africa and the African continent, Unisa can truly claim to be the African university in the service of humanity. Unisa stands at the pinnacle of education through open distance e-learning, with a footprint of students in more than 100 countries worldwide. Since the founding of the university in 1873 as an examining body, we have been a trailblazer. Unisa is the first and only institution in South Africa to carry our country's name with pride, and the first public university in the world to exclusively teach by means of distance education, an ever-changing dynamic university with a global reach. Unisa's history spans the entire modern history of South Africa, opening up a world of academic study opportunities for former activists and struggle heroes, thought leaders, business people, legal experts, acclaimed entertainers, and sports stars. The university takes pride in almost 1 million alumni, with 10 alumni chapters internationally, making their mark in diverse fields and capabilities. Some of the noteworthy alumni include President Nelson Mandela, Thabo Mbeki, who is also the Chancellor and custodian of the university's Calabash Awards, current President Cyril Ramaphosa, former South African Reserve Bank Governor Jill Marcus, and current one, Lesetja Kganyago. Internationally, Reserve Bank governors of Eswatini and Namibia, to name but a few. At Unisa, the World Wide Web is our educational playground, but we also have beautiful and impressive campuses. Unisa's Muckleneuk campus is located in the city of Tshwane and is a major landmark of the capital city. The Florida campus in Johannesburg is Unisa's science campus, housing state-of-the-art infrastructure and laboratory equipment. Unisa has 6 regional hubs including Ethiopia and multiple centers across the country. We have embraced the fact that we need to adapt quickly to the fast-paced higher education environment of the 21st century, and this is reflected in our management style and leadership practice. In articulating her vision, the new Principal and Vice-Chancellor of the University of South Africa, the first woman to be appointed at the helm of Unisa, Professor Buleng shared that Unisa is well placed to address society's most demanding challenges by using research to meaningfully transform the lives of those in our communities. To this end, Unisa is working on the following catalytic niche areas. Marine studies. As a discipline, marine studies covers field-specific studies like marine ecology and biology to policy-related studies like marine spatial planning and coastal economies. Many other areas of marine research and studies are covered in this niche area. Aviation and aeronautical studies. Aviation and aeronautical studies covers specializations in areas as diverse as aeronautical engineering and aerospace safety, and South Africa's 18 airports forms a major role player for passengers and goods transitioning to and from our country. This is a niche that supports a major component of the country's economy. Automotive studies. The South African automotive industry is projected to grow from 600,000 to 1.4 million vehicles a year in production. There is major potential to be explored in Unisa's commitment to automotive studies. In 2022, students from the Department of Mechanical Engineering participated in the Sachs Solar Challenge with their solar-powered car that travels from Johannesburg to Cape Town without using a single drop of fuel. Energy Studies. Unisa's Institute for Development of Energy for African Sustainability specializes in designing chemical processes, reducing material and energy consumption, as well as carbon dioxide emissions. Space Studies and Square Kilometer Array. Unisa has been extensively involved in the $1 billion Square Kilometer Array project since 2012. The Unisa Observatory, situated on the main campus, is a modern, well-equipped facility housing a 14-inch telescope where the College of Science, Engineering and Technology offers undergraduate courses in astrophysics and astronomy with specialization up to PhD level. Fourth Industrial Revolution and Digitalization. The Fourth Industrial Revolution can be described as the advent of cyber-physical systems, involving entirely new capabilities for people and machines. Examples include genome editing and new forms of machine intelligence. The College of Graduate Studies will support and promote studies into 4IR and digitalization, while the Graduate School of Business Leadership presents a short learning program on big data. Natural Sciences. The simplest definition of biotechnological studies is applied biology. Through the application of biological knowledge and techniques to develop products or services, Unisa's College of Agriculture and Environmental Sciences is one of the main partners in the African Biogenome Project, a coordinated Pan-African effort piloting a project with a key objective of sequencing 100,000 endemic species. Health and/or Pharmaceutical Studies. The Department of Health Studies is prepared for the challenge of equipping their students with research skills and expertise in the field of health and pharmaceutical studies. The UNESCO Unisa Africa Chair in Nanoscience and Nanotechnology is leading the international research into the nano-delivery of medicinal drugs, including African herbal medicine. The College of Law offers an elective undergraduate model on medical law. Feminist, Womanist, Busadi Theorizations. In the College of Human Sciences, the Institute for Gender Studies, the College of Education and the Graduate School of Business all contribute to the interdisciplinary research into eliminating gender-based violence, homophobia and transphobia, and discrimination against women in the workplace and the political arena. The Institute also uses education about gender as an effective way to achieve gender equality and the empowerment of women. Student support and co-curricular activities. Unisa is uniquely placed to offer creative and radically innovative ways of enhancing student support. Unisa's College of Graduate Studies has developed a whole range of training programs to assist and encourage students. The Advocacy and Resource Center for Students with Disabilities promotes the principle of access for success, and the Student Development Division provides students with social support and leadership development services. These niche areas find expression in the rich tapestry of our disciplines included in the College of Accounting Sciences, Agriculture and Environmental Sciences, Economic and Management Sciences, Education, Graduate Studies, Human Sciences, Law, Science, Engineering and Technology, the Graduate School of Business Leadership, and the Thabo Mbeki School of Public and International Affairs. As a comprehensive open-distance e-learning institution, Unisa is recognized as a serious player in research globally. From publication and journal output to the number of master's and doctoral graduates, we are moving forwards and upwards. Unisa has made substantial progress in research and innovation, as evidenced by several external and credible scientific ranking systems, with the latest ones, the 2023 Webometrics and Shanghai rankings, placing us in the top 10 universities in the country. As Africa's leading open-distance e-learning university, we can reflect with great pride on the past 150 years of transformational education, and we are confident in our ability to succeed and become a truly high-performance university as we define tomorrow.
Whatever the setbacks of the moment, nothing can stop us now. Whatever the difficulties, Africa shall be at peace. However improbable it may sound to the skeptics, Africa will prosper.
More than anything, Unisa must be celebrated as a pioneer of the distance education model, an enduring gift not only to South Africa, the continent, but to the human civilization in the knowledge arena the world over.
Education is the light in a dark room. It's the spark of a dream, a passport to the future, and the seed of generational change. Through education, we reflect on yesterday and define tomorrow. Rooted in South Africa and the African continent, Unisa can truly claim to be the African university in the service of humanity. Unisa stands at the pinnacle of education through open distance e-learning, with a footprint of students in more than 100 countries worldwide. Since the founding of the university in 1873 as an examining body, we have been a trailblazer. Unisa is the first and only institution in South Africa to carry our country's name with pride, and the first public university in the world to exclusively teach by means of distance education, an ever-changing dynamic university with a global reach. Unisa's history spans the entire modern history of South Africa, opening up a world of academic study opportunities for former activists and struggle heroes, thought leaders, business people, legal experts, acclaimed entertainers, and sports stars. The university takes pride in almost 1 million alumni, with 10 alumni chapters internationally, making their mark in diverse fields and capabilities. Some of the noteworthy alumni include President Nelson Mandela, Thabo Mbeki, who is also the Chancellor and custodian of the university's Calabash Awards, current President Cyril Ramaphosa, former South African Reserve Bank Governor Jill Marcus, and current one, Lesetja Kganyago. Internationally, Reserve Bank governors of Eswatini and Namibia, to name but a few. At Unisa, the World Wide Web is our educational playground, but we also have beautiful and impressive campuses. Unisa's Muckleneuk campus is located in the city of Tshwane and is a major landmark of the capital city. The Florida campus in Johannesburg is Unisa's science campus, housing state-of-the-art infrastructure and laboratory equipment. Unisa has 6 regional hubs including Ethiopia and multiple centers across the country. We have embraced the fact that we need to adapt quickly to the fast-paced higher education environment of the 21st century, and this is reflected in our management style and leadership practice. In articulating her vision, the new Principal and Vice-Chancellor of the University of South Africa, the first woman to be appointed at the helm of Unisa, Professor Pulenglin, shared that Unisa is well-placed to address society's most demanding challenges by using research to meaningfully transform the lives of those in our communities. To this end, Unisa is working on the following catalytic niche areas. Marine Studies. As a discipline, Marine Studies covers field-specific studies like marine ecology and biology to policy-related studies like marine spatial planning and coastal economies. Many other areas of marine research and studies are covered in this niche area. Aviation and Aeronautical Studies. Aviation and Aeronautical Studies covers specializations in areas as diverse as aeronautical engineering and aerospace safety, and South Africa's 18 airports forms a major role player for passengers and goods transitioning to and from our country. This is a niche that supports a major component of the country's economy. Automotive Studies. The South African automotive industry is projected to grow from 600,000 to 1.4 million vehicles a year in production. There is major potential to be explored in Unisa's commitment to automotive studies. In 2022, students from the Department of Mechanical Engineering participated in the Sachs Solar Challenge with their solar-powered car that travels from Johannesburg to Cape Town without using a single drop of fuel. energy studies. Unisa's Institute for Development of Energy for African Sustainability specializes in designing chemical processes, reducing material and energy consumption, as well as carbon dioxide emissions. Space studies and Square Kilometer Array. Unisa has been extensively involved in the $1 billion Square Kilometer Array project since 2012. The Unisa Observatory, situated on the main campus, is a modern, well-equipped facility housing a 14-inch telescope where the College of Science, Engineering and Technology offers undergraduate courses in astrophysics and astronomy with specialization up to PhD level. Fourth Industrial Revolution and Digitalization. The Fourth Industrial Revolution can be described as the advent of cyber-physical systems involving entirely new capabilities for people and machines. Examples include genome editing and new forms of machine intelligence. The College of Graduate Studies will support and promote studies into 4IR and digitalization, while the Graduate School of Business Leadership presents a short learning program on big data. Natural Sciences. The simplest definition of biotechnological studies is applied biology. Through the application of biological knowledge and techniques to develop products or services, Unisa's College of Agriculture and Environmental Sciences is one of the main partners in the African Biogenome Project, a coordinated Pan-African effort piloting a project with a key objective of sequencing 100,000 endemic species. Health and/or Pharmaceutical Studies. The Department of Health Studies is prepared for the challenge of equipping their students with research skills and expertise in the field of health and pharmaceutical studies. The UNESCO Unisa Africa Chair in Nanoscience and Nanotechnology is leading the international research into the nano-delivery of medicinal drugs, including African herbal medicine. The College of Law offers an elective undergraduate model on medical law. Feminist, womanist, Wusadi theorizations. In the College of Human Sciences, the Institute for Gender Studies, the College of Education and the Graduate School of Business all contribute to the interdisciplinary research into eliminating gender-based violence, homophobia and transphobia, and discrimination against women in the workplace and the political arena. The Institute also uses education about gender as an effective way to achieve gender equality and the empowerment of women. Student support and co-curricular activities. Unisa is uniquely placed to offer creative and radically innovative ways of enhancing student support. Unisa's College of Graduate Studies has developed a whole range of training programs to assist and encourage students. The Advocacy and Resource Center for Students with Disabilities promotes the principle of access for success, and the Student Development Division provides students with social support and leadership development services. These niche areas find expression in the rich tapestry of our disciplines included in the College of Accounting Sciences, Agriculture and Environmental Sciences, Economic and Management Sciences, Education, Graduate Studies, Human Sciences, Law, Science, Engineering and Technology, the Graduate School of Business Leadership, and the Thabo Mbeki School of Public and International Affairs. As a comprehensive open-distance e-learning institution, Unisa is recognized as a serious player in research globally. From publication and journal output to the number of master's and doctoral graduates, we are moving forwards and upwards. Unisa has made substantial progress in research and innovation, as evidenced by several external and credible scientific ranking systems, with the latest ones, the 2023 Webometrics and Shanghai rankings, placing us in the top 10 universities in the country. As Africa's leading open-distance e-learning university, we can reflect with great pride on the past 150 years of transformational education, and we are confident in our ability to succeed and become a truly high-performance university as we define tomorrow.
Whatever the setbacks of the moment, nothing can stop us now. Whatever the difficulties, Africa shall be at peace. However improbable it may sound to the skeptics, Africa will prosper.
More than anything, Unisa must be celebrated as a pioneer of the distance education model, an enduring gift not only to South Africa, the continent, but to the human civilization in the knowledge arena the world over.
Education is the light in a dark room. It's the spark of a dream, a passport to the future, and the seed of generational change. Through education, we reflect on yesterday and define tomorrow. Rooted in South Africa and the African continent, Unisa can truly claim to be the African university in the service of humanity. Unisa stands at the pinnacle of education through open distance e-learning, with a footprint of students in more than 100 countries worldwide. Since the founding of the university in 1873 as an examining body, we have been a trailblazer. Unisa is the first and only institution in South Africa to carry our country's name with pride, and the first public university in the world to exclusively teach by means of distance education, an ever-changing dynamic university with a global reach. Unisa's history spans the entire modern history of South Africa, opening up a world of academic study opportunities for former activists and struggle heroes, thought leaders, business people, legal experts, acclaimed entertainers, and sports stars. The university takes pride in almost 1 million alumni, with 10 alumni chapters internationally making their mark in diverse fields and capabilities. Some of the noteworthy alumni include President Nelson Mandela, Thabo Mbeki, who is also the Chancellor and custodian of the university's Calabash Awards, current President Cyril Ramaphosa, former South African Reserve Bank Governor Jill Marcus, and current one, Lesetja, internationally Reserve Bank governors of Eswatini and Namibia, to name but a few. At Unisa, the World Wide Web is our educational playground, but we also have beautiful and impressive campuses. Unisa's Muckleneuk campus is located in the city of Tshwane and is a major landmark of the capital city. The Florida campus in Johannesburg is Unisa's science campus, housing state-of-the-art infrastructure and laboratory equipment. Unisa has 6 regional hubs including Ethiopia and multiple centers across the country. We have embraced the fact that we need to adapt quickly to the fast-paced higher education environment of the 21st century, and this is reflected in our management style and leadership practice. In articulating her vision, the new Principal and Vice-Chancellor of the University of South Africa, the first woman to be appointed at the helm of Unisa, Professor Nkabula, shared that Unisa is well placed to address society's most demanding challenges by using research to meaningfully transform the lives of those in our communities. To this end, Unisa is working on the following catalytic niche areas. Marine studies. As a discipline, marine studies covers field-specific studies like marine ecology and biology to policy-related studies like marine spatial planning and coastal economies. Many other areas of marine research and studies are covered in this niche area. Aviation and aeronautical studies. Aviation and aeronautical studies covers specializations in areas as diverse as aeronautical engineering and aerospace safety, and South Africa's 18 airports forms a major role player for passengers and goods transitioning to and from our country. This is a niche that supports a major component of the country's economy. Automotive studies. The South African automotive industry is projected to grow from 600,000 to 1.4 million vehicles a year in production. There is major potential to be explored in Unisa's commitment to automotive studies. In 2022, students from the Department of Mechanical Engineering participated in the Sachs Solar Challenge with their solar-powered car that travels from Johannesburg to Cape Town without using a single drop of fuel. Energy Studies. Unisa's Institute for Development of Energy for African Sustainability specializes in designing chemical processes, reducing material and energy consumption, as well as carbon dioxide emissions. Space Studies and Square Kilometer Array. Unisa has been extensively involved in the $1 billion Square Kilometer Array project since 2012. The Unisa Observatory, situated on the main campus, is a modern, well-equipped facility housing a 14-inch telescope where the College of Science, Engineering and Technology offers undergraduate courses in astrophysics and astronomy with specialization up to PhD level. Fourth Industrial Revolution and Digitalization. The fourth industrial revolution can be described as the advent of cyber-physical systems involving entirely new capabilities for people and machines. Examples include genome editing and new forms of machine intelligence. The College of Graduate Studies will support and promote studies into 4IR and digitalization, while the Graduate School of Business Leadership presents a short learning program on big data. Natural Sciences. The simplest definition of biotechnological studies is applied biology. Through the application of biological knowledge and techniques to develop products or services, Unisa's College of Agriculture and Environmental Sciences is one of the main partners in the African Biogenome Project, a coordinated Pan-African effort piloting a project with a key objective of sequencing 100,000 endemic species. Health and/or Pharmaceutical Studies. The Department of Health Studies is prepared for the challenge of equipping their students with research skills and expertise in the field of health and pharmaceutical studies. The UNESCO Unisa Africa Chair in Nanoscience and Nanotechnology is leading the international research into the nano-delivery of medicinal drugs, including African herbal medicine. The College of Law offers an elective undergraduate model on medical law. Feminist, Womanist, Busadi Theorizations. In the College of Human Sciences, the Institute for Gender Studies, the College of Education and the Graduate School of Business all contribute to the interdisciplinary research into eliminating gender-based violence, homophobia and transphobia, and discrimination against women in the workplace and the political arena. The Institute also uses education about gender as an effective way to achieve gender equality and the empowerment of women. Student support and co-curricular activities. Unisa is uniquely placed to offer creative and radically innovative ways of enhancing student support. Unisa's College of Graduate Studies has developed a whole range of training programs to assist and encourage students. The Advocacy and Resource Center for Students with Disabilities promotes the principle of access for success, and the Student Development Division provides students with social support and leadership development services. These niche areas find expression in the rich tapestry of our disciplines included in the College of Accounting Sciences, Agriculture and Environmental Sciences, Economic and Management Sciences, Education, Graduate Studies, Human Sciences, Law, Science, Engineering and Technology, the Graduate School of Business Leadership, and the Thabo Mbeki School of Public and International Affairs. As a comprehensive open-distance e-learning institution, Unisa is recognized as a serious player in research globally. From publication and journal output to the number of master's and doctoral graduates, we are moving forwards and upwards. Unisa has made substantial progress in research and innovation, as evidenced by several external and credible scientific ranking systems, with the latest ones, the 2023 Webometrics and Shanghai rankings, placing us in the top 10 universities in the country. As Africa's leading open-distance e-learning university, we can reflect with great pride on the past 150 years of transformational education, and we are confident in our ability to succeed and become a truly high-performance university as we define tomorrow.
Whatever the setbacks of the moment, nothing can stop us now. Whatever the difficulties, Africa shall be at peace. However improbable it may sound to the skeptics, Africa will prosper.
More than anything, Unisa must be celebrated as a pioneer of the distance education model, an enduring gift not only to South Africa, the continent, but to the human civilization in the knowledge arena the world over.
Education is the light in a dark room. It's the spark of a dream.
Tourism. We thank you very much for making the time to be with us. Without further ado, please allow me to welcome to Unisa, as they make their way into the auditorium, the distinguished global economist, Professor Jeffrey Sachs, together with the Vice Chancellor of the University of South Africa, Professor Buleng Lengabula. I almost feel like I want to say, was that the best you could do for Professor Sachs? Thank you very much. So let me start off by saying, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the warmest welcome to the 2025 Founders Lecture, which, as you know, will be delivered today by a luminary of global economics, a fierce commentator on social justice, an author, a policymaker, and a leading light in this complex field of economics. I'm not alone today. I have Thuli and Nontlantla, who will be our sign language interpreters, making today's lecture fully inclusive for all those who are watching via live stream, and the warmest welcome to all of those who are joining us virtually. My name is Lerato Mbele, and I'm going to facilitate the discussions that take place today. As we begin, I'd like to just set the scene of why we're having today's lecture and under the theme with which we're having today's lecture. In a world characterized by uncertainty and shifting allegiances, I think it's fair to say that few things hold true. But there are a few hard truths, indisputable truths, that we do know regardless of this uncertainty. One of them is that the world today is characterized by high inequality. In fact, it's worsened. And we know that over the past 25 years, the wealthiest 1% of the world have been able to capture 41% of new wealth and commercial opportunities. We also know that countries of the global south account for about 60% of economic activity and production, and yet the value of the global economy, as measured by assets, intellectual property, profits, it sits in Western capital markets. And yet 60% of the economic activity is in the global south, but the true value of that economic activity sits in Western capital markets. Another truth we know is that it's being reported that when you go to global debt markets, the borrowing costs for African countries tends to be 14 to 20% more of the cost of capital than what it is for other countries to borrow at a sovereign level. And then, of course, there's a multiplier once you start talking about businesses that come from those countries. So there seems to be a problem with modeling risk when it comes to Africa in particular. Now, we are all members of a global community, and the values of that global community converge under the banner of the United Nations. And through the United Nations, we have the Sustainable Development Goals, which have set 17 targets for the world to pursue. And the number one SDG is to eradicate poverty by year 2030. And then there's a range of other targets, 16 others. They focus on gender parity, improving healthcare, education and access, climate consciousness. But where in 2025, the road to 2030 is very short, and it doesn't appear that we're going to meet many of those targets set for the SDGs, thus worsening the situation of inequality in the world. And then finally, let's not forget that we live in a world where there is justifiable rage and anger about the conflicts in Gaza and ensuing tensions in the Middle East, and the conflict in Ukraine and threats to the eastern frontier of Europe. But little attention is being paid to the ongoing conflicts in eastern DRC, in Sudan, in Myanmar. This skews the focus of the world and what the world deems are priorities that we should all be seized with. And what that does is it creates a prejudice in the application of international law. It's not consistent. And then it also means that media coverage is selective. Now, I've just chosen a few examples within the nexus of conflict, global markets, international development finance, media coverage. It does not in any way present you a whole picture of the world. But I do think it's an illustration, simplistically so, of why we need to have the lecture we're having today. Because in this world of skewed priorities, inequality, selective narratives, privilege and prejudice, it is very important that we talk more consistently about the international financial architecture, about global security as it impacts all of humanity, about the equitable distribution of resources, about global accountability at the highest supranational level, about better representation of our stories, and about fairer narratives. And so the theme of this 2025 Founders Lecture is very important in encapsulating these concerns. It's titled Solidarity, Social Justice, Reclaiming Futures, the Universities in Contested Geopolitics. Let me be neater in reading it out. Our theme for this year's Founders Lecture, solidarity, coming together, social justice, fairness and equity, and reclaiming our futures, building and reimagining that future better. And the universities in contested geopolitics. And this theme for this Founders Lecture aligns quite beautifully with the G20 theme, the first time this global forum comes to Africa. And the G20 theme in itself is solidarity, equality, and sustainability. And so here we are, Unisa, and here's South Africa and Africa saying to the world, can we talk about fairer outcomes in the world? And universities are not just centers of learning, but they're an important resource in generating fresh perspectives about the world in which we live. And when that happens, we start to change those narratives. And so with those words, the warmest welcome to the 2025 Founders Lecture, as we talk about solidarity, social justice, and reclaiming our futures, the universities in contested spaces. Can we give special applause to Unisa in the form of the Unisa Council, MANCO, and the team that supports the VC in bringing these really dynamic and timely conversations to the fore, one of which we'll be privileged to witness today. Thank you. And so she is a leader perfect for our time. Welcome warmly, please, the Vice Chancellor of the University of South Africa, Professor Buleng Lenkabula.
my goodness. I think they were trying to make us taller. Good evening. Sanbonani, Avsheni, Riperile, Assalamu alaikum, Khotsong. Good evening. Thank you very much. Let me thank our program director, who is truly loved for being very astute on intellectual assessments, but also the roles of media people in our country, in our continent, and the contribution of media. Can I request that we give a round of applause? I start with her because oftentimes when we do vote of thanks, the program directors are forgotten. So we don't want to forget, so we're quite appreciative. Let me also recognize our colleagues who help us to ensure that universal access for people or persons with disabilities is ascertained at our university as an important imperative. I wish to recognize our sign language interpreters, Ms. Tuli Zikalala, as well as Ms. Nonhlanhla Ndaba. We're truly honored, Minister Delil and all of you, guests of the University of South Africa, to have our eminent guest speaker, Professor Jeffrey Sachs, amongst us. Can I request Madikizela-Mandela? No, I would like it in an African way. We are celebrating like we're at his university, Columbia or Harvard. Can we do it? Madikizela-Mandela, Mekgolokwani. I am definite, Professor Sachs, that you can feel that the spirit of Ubuntu, that idea that we are inextricably bound with each other, is very important in this university. I cannot start without acknowledging the presence of the chairperson of Council of the University of South Africa, Dr. Den Musia, and members of Council present here this evening. Let me also recognize the members of the executive and extended management of the university. Minister Patricia de Lille, Minister of Tourism and Member of Parliament, and all members of the national, provincial, and local government present. I think we need to give a round of applause. Minister de Lille, thank you. He could have chosen to be at, at Birchwood. He's here, so we are appreciative. We are also honored to have the Minister of Youth Affairs from Sierra Leone, His Excellency or Honorable Minister Ibrahim Sano, Minister of Youth Affairs, Sierra Leone. Can I request you to stand so that at least our colleagues. Thank you. Thank you, Minister. I'll tell you why I asked him to stand. Let me also recognize Honorable Murapkani Musupre, Speaker of the Gauteng Legislature. Bomme. Advocate Koleka Kaleka, the Public Protector of the Republic of South Africa. Thank you. Colonel Eugene Modise, Deputy Mayor and MMC of Finance for the City of Tshwane. Thank you. And now that we are talking about resourcing and finance, colleagues, we have colleagues from the World Bank and Afri-Exim Bank, and I'm honored to recognize the presence of Dr. Geopolitical around us. Can I please say? He's one of the executive of Afri-Exim Bank, and we're honored to have him here. And of course, colleagues, when you have a lecture like this, you have important colleagues who engage, who dissect, who dialogue with the keynote speaker in the spirit of Africa. That engagement is that which allows us to sit around the fire and to ensure that the fire chat is important. We are honored to have amongst us Professor Tsepo Madlingos, the Commissioner of South African Human Rights Commission. Dr. Nombulelo Shange, Sociology Lecturer, University of the Free State. Dr. Genevieve James, Deputy Director, Engaged Scholarship at the University of South Africa. And of course, in the Founders Lecture, we also have stalwarts who fought for the liberation of our country, those who are still interested in knowledge as an important transformational commitment. We have Dr. Mavuso and Mrs. Msimang, recipient of Unisa Honorary Doctorate and South African civil servant and politician. Members of business, judiciary, ecclesiastical communities present, members of sister universities, Science Council, and the innovation systems, members of the University of South Africa present here tonight, those watching us virtually, representatives from various media houses, distinguished academics, the intellectual brain trust of our country, continent, and the world, distinguished guests, good evening, and thank you for coming to Unisa this evening. I'd like to say it couldn't have been a more important investment for Unisa to acknowledge in its academic and scientific endeavor the imperative of lectures as important arena for our university to ensure that we make knowledge an important asset and resource for our society to engage with, to use as a tool to transform, but to ensure that the world becomes an important arena for our contribution. It is my singular honor to welcome you to yet another installation of the Founders Lecture this year. Your overwhelming response to this lecture is a testament to the excellent progressive work that the University of South Africa has been undertaking, and in particular, to the excellent work that Professor Jeffrey Sachs, the affirmation that you put by ensuring that you become a partner and an interlocutor to the work that we are doing. I invited Professor Sachs to Unisa 2 years ago. I wrote a letter on the 27th of April, 2023, saying, Professor Sachs, we would like to engage with you on geopolitics as we celebrate 150 years of Unisa. He was delighted, but he said, no, I'll be coming in this year, so let's plan towards that. Welcome to Unisa, even after 2 years. So the others, you know, have been following. You understand? Thank you. The idea of the Founders Lecture was introduced at the University of South Africa with the aim of encouraging the university and its epistemic communities, internal and external, to focus on critical issues in higher education at both national and global levels. Over the past 22 years, a variety of topics have been presented by eminent and renowned scholars, locally, continentally, and globally. This has established the Founders Lecture as a premium forum for intellectual exchange of ideas and engagement of Africa and the world. Since its establishment, the Founders Lecture has attracted some of the finest thinkers of our time, many of those whose works reverberate across generations. Some of the lectures that have given us these important lectures include Her Excellency President Johnson Sirleaf, the first woman president in the continent of Africa, the former president of Liberia. I think we need. We also have Professor George Ellis, Distinguished Professor of Complex Systems at University of Cape Town. Professor Mampele Rampele, the former Vice Chancellor and the Principal of the University of Cape Town. Recently, we have the former Public Protector, Thulisile Madonsela, the law Trust Chair of Social Justice Law at the University of Stellenbosch. Professor Sachs, you'd be appreciative to know that your colleague at the Center of Africa Studies, the Littner Family Professor of African Studies, History, Middle East and Southern Asia, as well as Africa Studies, Professor Mamadou Diouf, was also gave a lecture in this university. So Columbia seems to be loving Unisa. Justice Miaza Ashenafi Mengistu, the first president of Federal Supreme Court of Ethiopia, gave a lecture last year. And this year, we're truly honored to have yet another progressive thinker, a scholar, an excellent educator, in the name of Professor Jeffrey Sachs, as a lecturer. Welcome to Unisa, Professor Sachs. Welcome to you also, Dr. Sonia Sachs. He's not coming alone. He's with his wife, who's a medical doctor, Dr. Sachs. Can I request you to welcome? At Unisa, we don't just talk about gender equality, we practice it. The world is experiencing profound changes, the scale of which was last seen at the end of the Cold War. The collapse of the Soviet Union and the fall of Berlin Wall in 1989 was a turning point in world history. Since then, the world has virtually been ruled by a preponderance of Anglo-Saxon worldview and hegemon led by United States, Britain, the so-called leaders of the Western world or the Western civilization. In that epoch, Western values and systems of political and economic governance have been prevalent, if not prescriptive, especially to the newly independent and former colonies. Global capitalism and democratic liberalism combined to inform that kind of worldview and imagination for many leaders, institutions, cultures, in a world that most parts of the world either assimilated or got socialized into this way. However, the Euro-American economic crisis of 2008 became another sign point in a series of many crises of global capitalism and liberal democracy, perhaps signaling another significant shift in world history. Like these endless wars, the economic crisis put a strain on the legitimacy and the hegemony of Western way, both the European or American capitals, as well as the capitals within our own societies. The middle classes and the living conditions caused a lot of doubt on whether liberal democracy can deliver a better quality of life. For many in the global South, the promise of freedom, peace, and development could not materialize, mainly due to the neo-colonial nature of the state and transformed patterns of accumulation and sheer governance failures and lack of imagination. On the academic and knowledge front, the assimilation of knowledge systems of Euro-America became entrenched, and therefore trying to ensure that the narrow nationalism and protectionism away from the gospel of globalization, which was sold to the global village, became an important and still an important question for us to ponder. Of course, the re-emergence of China as an ancient civilization and second-last economic changes of the global balance of power that's given rise to heightened geopolitical tensions almost everywhere has become an important phenomenon for us to study. Many a times we celebrate the presence of China in our communities, yet without the analytics of the requisite benefits for our societies, partnership, solidarity, and sustainability. And we think these are important questions for universities and societies to ask. The world has not seen such heightened levels of geopolitical tensions, uncertainties since at least the Cold War era. These tensions play themselves in the theater of trade wars, regional conflicts, proxy wars, cyber wars, resource nationalism, and the rise of political extremists or fundamentalisms that are arising, which lead to the shifting sands of the global balance of power right in front of our eyes. Some are saying we are witnessing the return of big power politics of an era gone by. As China among the big powers rise up, the sophistication ladder in Africa's realities, as Africa realizes its potential as the next economic growth frontier, the question arises, will this be a trap? Will it materialize? When there is a rise of one big power and the decline of another, does it lead to war, or what will it lead to? Will the transition to a more peaceful and sustainable world order be available? For most of us in Africa and in the global south, it is important that we engage critically with the new ways of mobilizing our energy questions of social justice, solidarity for just, peaceful, and sustainable world order. Through a sheer-sized, resource-based civilization, inventions, and human talent, Africa needs to reclaim its position in the world. We need to decolonize, pursue development, and resolve most pressing challenges of our region, such as poverty, inequality, and creation of a better life for people. As a Tanzanian development economist and a theologian, Rogate Mshana, puts it, we must engage ourselves in advocating for poverty eradication, not poverty reduction. Did you hear? Mshana says we should be advocating for poverty eradication by investing in people. Finance must serve the people and must not be detached from the real economy. We must not depend on speculative economy, while the real economy that provides work, dignity, are not invested upon. The economy of life in the service of life, where poverty is eradicated, social justice is embraced, ecological justice promoted, must be the essence of the next generation of sustainable development goals and beyond, suggests Mshana. In the recent times, universities all over the world have had to deal with the key existential questions such as academic freedom, sustainability, relevance, and competition. Some say, no, we don't need universities, we need them. Education is an asset. Thank you. I was expecting more because we are at a university. And Professor Sachs, especially because of the rise of anti-intellectualism, not just in our country, continent, but also even in the US. And therefore, it's very important for us to assert the imperative of universities as important institutions that must be invested upon to change the plight of society through science, research, and knowledge. Even the United States, the student protests, the Harvard affair, the withdrawal of funding by Trump administration, including to our university, University of South Africa suffered the same trajectory. Most of these existential questions are fueled by ongoing and rapid transformation in areas of disciplines such as technology, medical sciences, climatic changes, sources of funding, geopolitics, and changing nature of political economy, in a word, the key drivers of our world. And therefore, colleagues, I am not here to deliver a lecture, but because we're in the halls of university, as the Vice Chancellor and the key academic for our university, it was important to lay the ground why we have this theme for the Founders Lecture, that our professor Jeffrey Sachs will be addressing and the respondents will be responding to. Before I invite Professor Sachs to deliver the lecture, let me take this opportunity to speak about you just a bit. Your lifelong commitment to ideas, intellectual pursuit and transformation, your willingness to collaborate with other scholars in order to make sure that as an economics professor, you're not limited only to traditional logics of economics, but you engage with other scholars as a best-selling author, innovative educator, a global leader in sustainable development. All of you are here because we recognize him as a bold and effective strategist who addresses complex challenges, who enable us to reflect on difficult questions, whether poverty, the global battle against human-induced climatic changes, international debt and financial crisis, national economic reform and control of the pandemic, including epidemic diseases. Prior to joining Columbia University, Sachs spent over 20 years as a professor at Harvard University, and most recently as the Garland L. Stone Professor of International Trade. He's a native of Detroit, Michigan, and he has received his BA and MA as well as PhD at Harvard University. We hopefully know that all of you have bought his books. We tried to look at whether we could buy his books so that they're signed, and they're all sold out. You can check, you can Google, colleagues, just now. And therefore, we're quite appreciative, therefore, Professor Sachs, that there's something beautiful that the Chair of Council of the University of South Africa is going to do on behalf of His Excellency, President Mbeki, the Chancellor of Unisa. That will be your small surprise, but I know you know about it. I want to also thank our respondents. Professor Madlingos, can I please request you to stand? You know, he's a brave lawyer beyond being a human rights commissioner. Read his works. Can I ask Dr. Shange to also stand? Finally, can I ask Dr. James from the University of South Africa? Thank you. Colleagues, welcome to Unisa, the University of Leaders, the home of President Mandela, President Mbeki, President Ramaphosa, Jill Marcos, Mampela Rampela, and many leaders that have gone on to build this beautiful country, continent, and the world. Welcome, Professor Sachs. We look forward to your lecture.
Wow, I like this audience, thank you. Thank you so much for this wonderful honor and this wonderful warm greeting, the opportunity to be with you here at truly a historic moment. This country has the presidency of the G20, and this is a truly historic opportunity and a sign of the great leadership of Africa. And I want to make one note of the arithmetic of what is involved in the meeting tomorrow. As you know, 2 years ago, the G20 expanded by welcoming the African Union to full membership, an absolutely wonderful occasion which brought the 1.4 billion people of Africa into proper representation in this group. And I had been waiting and urging that we, of course, rename the group as the G21. And it should be, except we have had a favor. Donald Trump is staying home. So not only did we go G20, G21, back to G20, Africa has replaced the United States in the proper center. And it's going to be a wonderful meeting without Mr. Trump tomorrow, believe me. I know, because I've been hearing from my colleagues who have been at COP30 in Brazil, another meeting that the United States skipped, how absolutely pleasant the meeting was. So I'm very much looking forward to the events in the next 2 days. And I am sure that they will bring true luster to this country and to this continent. And Vice Chancellor, I'm a little late, but I'm here. So when you beckoned, I knew that I would be here. I'm celebrating the 152nd anniversary of this great school, and that's even better than the 150th anniversary. So this is an added plus. What an esteemed institution this is, and what a crucial institution. And not only did the Vice Chancellor make this wonderful invitation to me, but she gave me a wonderful assignment also, because she assigned me a topic. And the topic is really in every way exactly pertinent. The topic is solidarity, social justice, and reclaiming the future, the role of universities in contested geopolitics. Vice Chancellor, I love every word of the title, because every word is truly essential for our time. As I'll emphasize, solidarity, and especially African unity, is crucial for solving the problems that we face. Social justice is at the core of our agenda. As the UN says, where I work, leave no one behind. Everyone comes forward together. Reclaiming the future is a very important concept. We are claiming the future, making the future, but also we have to understand the past and what was taken and what needs to be reclaimed, because this is also an important part of our reality. And then after the colon of those three ideas of solidarity, social justice, and reclaiming the future is the role of the university in contested geopolitics. And I want to emphasize the role of the university is unique and indispensable. And this university is absolutely remarkable and will play a fundamental, transformative role for all of Africa in the years ahead. And if I can help in any way, I want to say right at the outset, it would be a joy, a pleasure, an honor, because what you are doing is absolutely pivotal to the future not only of this country, but also to the future of all of Africa, and that means the future of the whole world. So this is really extraordinary. I want to read something to you, because it is, if I can find it, yeah. It's a passage, little bit archaic in language, but it's my favorite passage from the fundamental text of economics, but of the best kind, I think. And that's the book written 249 years ago by Adam Smith, who we call the founder of thinking about economics for our time. And he was really a wonderful thinker. He was a genius, and he was also a humanist, a very decent man. And he wrote 249 years ago in 1776, a couple paragraphs that have stuck with me my whole career, but I think are very pertinent for our discussion this evening. So if you'll permit me to just quote a rather long quote, but I'll explain why it fits exactly about reclaiming our future and the role of universities and contested geopolitics. So this is what Adam Smith wrote in 1776. He said, "The discovery of America and that of a passage to the East Indies by the Cape of Good Hope are the two greatest and most important events recorded in the history of mankind." It's a big statement. "Their consequences have already been very great." And remember, he was writing about Christopher Columbus's voyage in 1492 and Vasco da Gama's circling the Cape of Good Hope on the way to India in 1498. So he was already writing more than 2.5 centuries later. And he says their consequences have already been very great. But in the short period between 2 and 3 centuries, which has elapsed since those discoveries were made, it is impossible that the whole extent of their consequences can have been seen. What benefits or what misfortunes to mankind may hereafter result from those great events, no human wisdom can foresee. By uniting in some measure the most distant parts of the world, by enabling them to relieve one another's wants, to increase one another's enjoyments, and to encourage one another's industry, their general tendency would seem to be beneficial. So he's saying by connecting the different parts of the world, this should be, in general, a benefit. That now the Americas are connected with Europe, Europe's connected with Asia by sea-based trade. This should be beneficial. But then he goes on, because he was an extremely decent and learned man, he says, "To the natives, however, both of the East and West Indies, all the commercial benefits which can have resulted from those events have been sunk and lost in the dreadful misfortunes which they have occasioned. These misfortunes, however, seem to have arisen rather from accident than from anything in the nature of those events themselves. At the particular time when these discoveries were made, the superiority of force happened to be so great on the side of the Europeans that they were enabled to commit with impunity every sort of injustice in those remote countries." And this is what I really like. So he's saying it should have benefited everybody, but Europe went beat the hell out of everybody, if you'll excuse me. And they did. And this began the process of European imperialism all over the world. But then Adam Smith, writing in 1776, because of his humanism and his genius and his foresight, said the following, and this is what I think is really key for us today. He said, if I can find it, "Hereafter, perhaps, the natives of those countries may grow stronger, or those of Europe may grow weaker, and the inhabitants of all the different quarters of the world may arrive at that equality of courage and force, which by inspiring mutual fear can alone overawe the injustice of independent nations into some sort of respect for the rights of one another." So in other words, he's saying things can equal out over time. Europe could become weaker, the rest of the world can become stronger, and then there can be a balance of force. And then he says, "But nothing seems more likely to establish this equality of force than that mutual communication of knowledge and of all the sorts of improvements which an extensive commerce from all countries to all countries naturally, or rather necessarily, carries along with it." What is he saying? He's saying that writing in 1776, Europe Europe dominated so much of the world. Of course, a century later, Europe would colonize almost all of Africa. So that brutality was pervasive across the Americas, across Asia, and soon after Adam Smith wrote, across almost all of Africa. But then he says this is not the inevitable long term. The world will rebalance. And how will the world rebalance? It will rebalance through knowledge. Sapientia, as your motto says, pro gentibus sapientia, for the public knowledge. So knowledge will enable a rebalancing of force and global justice. And then he says, where will that knowledge, how will that knowledge be transmitted? He says, actually through openness, through trade, through commerce. Different parts of the world will learn the technologies, the skills, so that all parts of the world benefit by the advances in human knowledge. And that sharing of human knowledge will create the just world that an interconnected world should be. Well, I love this section of The Wealth of Nations because, first of all, he got it right. 250 years later, the world has rebalanced. Not fully, but it sure is on its way. That's what we call geopolitics. Nothing less than the world rebalancing. Why isn't Donald Trump coming tomorrow? Because he has a 4-year-old mentality, and he's having a tantrum. He's having a tantrum. What is the tantrum? That the rest of the world says, we don't want a king. As President Lula said, we don't need an emperor. He would come here as just one of 20 leaders, or 21. He doesn't want that. He's having a tantrum. So this rebalancing is happening. He's having a particular tantrum, by the way, because the United States is in a deeply neurotic funk. You know what the cause of that neurosis is? China. A wonderful, brilliant civilization, 4,000 years old plus. It's been a unified state with brilliant statecraft for more than 2,000 years. Unlike Europe, in which every country of Europe fought every other country of Europe every year for 1,000 years. Most of the time, China was peaceful, united. It fragmented temporarily at some points, but it was mainly a unified country that actually, strangely enough, didn't beat up its neighbors also. So China, for 1,000 years, never attacked Japan, for example. Can you imagine? Britain couldn't keep its hands off any place for more than a year or two at a time. It had to go beat up somebody. And the United States doesn't even take a year off. I don't know the truth yet. It could be an accident, but I don't think so. Today, a major refinery in Venezuela suddenly exploded. That seems a lot like the CIA to me. I don't guarantee it. We don't have any more news. But last week, President Trump said he had assigned the CIA to operations inside Venezuela, and a week later, suddenly the biggest refinery blows up. So the United States can hardly go a week at a time without trying to kill somebody. But China actually goes centuries without attacking its neighbors. So China went for 1,000 years without once invading Japan, a near neighbor, even though China was much more powerful. Incidentally, from 2 times, there was an attempt to invade Japan from the Chinese mainland, but that was when China had been conquered by the Mongols. So 800 years ago, roughly, they tried twice. The Mongols tried to invade Japan, and they were defeated both times. But the Chinese never tried. The Japanese actually, sadly, invaded China many times, but never the other way around. And the Chinese never invaded Korea. And the Chinese did invade Vietnam once, but that was 615 years ago. And then they had a skirmish for 1 month in 1979. Other than that, that's the so-called enemy of the United States. So that's why I call it a neurosis. China's the least threat possible. Doesn't threaten anybody. Doesn't attack anybody. Hasn't been in any war for 46 years, and the war that it was in 46 years ago lasted 1 month. That's when Vietnam toppled a government in Cambodia that China viewed as an ally, and so it punished Vietnam for a month for having overthrown their ally in Cambodia. Other than that, no wars for more than 4 decades. But we're in a funk because the American idea is you have to be number one so you can boss everyone else around. And by the way, we learned every trick we know from the British, who did that for 200 years before that. So that's where the geopolitics comes in. What Adam Smith is saying in 1776 is we need to look forward to a future in which there is equal force, mutual respect, social justice. And we're at that hinge moment of history. Because to my way of thinking, we are at the end of 3 major cycles. First, with these momentous discoveries that Adam Smith talked about, these sea routes that the Europeans found, that began a period of European ascent in the world history and world economy, because Europe was nothing special economically or geopolitically in 1500. You would not put it as likely to succeed or to dominate. But those events changed the course of events. Then in 1750 and really in 1776, oddly enough, the same year that Adam Smith wrote The Wealth of Nations, a very skilled engineer, we would say today, but he didn't have that title, a man named James Watt, working at the University of Glasgow, fittingly at a university, stuck a condenser on a steam engine that had been invented decades before, and suddenly the steam engine became incredibly efficient, low cost, and suddenly the industrial age was feasible because of that great invention of the steam engine. That happened, that commercial steam engine of James Watt, which is why we talk about megawatts today, because of Mr. Watt and the power that his steam engine brought. That came in 1776, and Britain was the first country to industrialize, and it really did beat up the rest of the world after that, because the industrialization, the power that came with that, the industrial, military led to a worldwide imperialism that dominated the 19th and the first part of the 20th century. And at its apogee, the British Empire had 1/4 of all the people in the world under British imperial domination. Of course, India was a big part of that 25% of humanity. So that's the second part of a cycle. And then, because Europe has a very hard time making peace within Europe. It's really a sickness, actually, I'm sorry to say. We love Europe. My wife's born in Europe, my family comes from Europe, but they fight each other so much. Not my wife and me, but every two countries bear a grudge. Yesterday, I was texting with a friend of mine who wrote to me because he was giving a lecture in Poland, in Warsaw, and I said, yes, it's so sad, the hatred of Russia in Poland. And he said, oh, but remember what Russia did. And he said, you have to remember, in 1792, that's what he wrote. And I wrote, get over it. You don't have to fight every time because in 1792, you fought because the Russians would say, yeah, 1792, but in 1610, you invaded us. And that's true, by the way. Poland started it. When Russia was in trouble, in so-called times of trouble in 1610, it was Poland that invaded Russia. Then Russia invaded Poland 150 years later, and on, and they can't stop. And there is, by the way, there's the famous saying of the philosopher George Santayana, the Spanish philosopher of the 20th century, that those who forget history are condemned to repeat it. And my wife has a better one, though. Sonia says those who remember history are condemned to repeat it, because all you do is you bear a grudge for 1,000 years. Get over it. So I think that so I was going to say Europe destroyed itself in 2 civil wars, which we call World War I and World War II. And by the end of the Second World War, Europe was so broken that decolonization came. Not, by the way, because it was inevitable had there not been the wars, but Britain was bankrupt at the end of 1945, after 2 world wars. And Europe had lost any claim whatsoever, not that it deserved it ever, but any claim that it was a civilizing mission or anything else. Not only was it a completely reckless and cruel incivility of the imperial age, but they couldn't even within Europe behave with any decency and slaughtered tens of millions of people. So at the end of World War II, imperialism wasn't quite over, though. Europe lost its colonies step by step. Sometimes there were wars of decolonization in Africa. Sometimes it went more quickly and somewhat peacefully. It all depended. But there was one more empire that was going to stand, and that was the United States empire, because the U.S. became a world empire, and not only a world empire in 1945, and again, having learned the tricks of the trade from Britain, it was a world empire that aspired to dominate the world. And the policy of the United States was there should be no rival. So this was not quite possible because one major power, the Soviet Union itself, did not want to be dominated by the United States, and rather than making peace between the US and the Soviet Union, which were allies in World War II. Remember that, they were allies. The US and Britain said, we're enemies of our ally, the one that had actually broken the back of Hitler's army, because the Soviet people lost 27 million in World War II. They bore the brunt of World War II. They defeated Hitler, but the US and Britain did not know how to make peace. They said the Soviet Union's the new enemy, and a Cold War emerged. And I put a lot of the responsibility on the US side for this, because what Russia or the Soviet Union wanted was for Germany to be demilitarized and neutral. And the United States said, no, Germany will be remilitarized and part of our new military alliance, NATO. And the Soviet Union said, now you're a threat to us again. And that led to decades of Cold War. So we lost what could have been the peace. But the United States saw the Soviet Union as, of course, the enemy. The Soviet economic system was not so great, and the US was out to break it in any event through controls on technology and isolation, containment it was called. And as of 1991, the Soviet Union had an economic collapse, and it collapsed into 15 successor states. And I mention this because at that moment, the United States said, oh my God, now we made it. We're alone. We run the world. And believe me, that's how they felt. And that was an illusion, a delusion. They thought Russia, that's a nothing. And they thought China, don't they grow rice there? That's an impoverished country of villages. We don't even have to worry about that. We are the sole superpower of the world. Well, that's not how economics works, actually, because Adam Smith's insight is completely right, which is that if you are fortunate to have open trade, peace, and good economic policies, you get a lot of catching up by the transmission of knowledge, technology, and the opportunities for rapid advance. So while the United States wasn't watching, and I know they weren't watching because they're not very clever there in Washington, I have to tell you, and they don't understand much of economics at all. They weren't paying attention, but China was growing at 10% per year, thank you. And if you do that, you double the size of your economy every 7 years. And if you do that for 35 years, which China did, you've doubled 5 times. And doubling 5 times means you've grown 32 times. And if you continue beyond that, China has increased the size of its economy 40 times since 1980, 40 times. It's now a bigger economy than the United States. It's a much bigger industrial power. It is technologically more advanced than the United States in most sectors, not all, but in most sectors right now. When you drive your vehicles 10 years from now, they will be Chinese electric vehicles. And even if you happen to drive a Tesla, that's a Chinese vehicle, by the way, with Elon Musk at the top. But it's the gigafactory in Shanghai that gives it even a chance to compete. So China made it, and that's why we're at the end of yet another cycle. The European imperial age is over. The British imperial age ended in 1945, and the US imperial age is ending right now. And that's why Donald Trump is home. Because he doesn't want to be one of several. That's all. The delusion is still in Washington, by the way. It's not over. It's still a powerful country. It's still a dangerous country. It's got too big a military. It still has its hands on the valves of the international payment system to a large extent. It can turn on and off the spigot for countries that are vulnerable. Remember, the IMF and the World Bank are U.S. institutions, even though they are multilateral institutions. They were founded for not bad purposes, by the way, but they are American-dominated institutions, and that gives continuing power. And I always emphasize geography in thinking about economics. So the geography is that at Pennsylvania Avenue, which is where the White House is, now there's a West Wing and no East Wing because he knocked it down a couple weeks ago, this idiot. Excuse me. Sorry, it's true. I'm just being technical. At 16th in Pennsylvania is the White House. 15th in Pennsylvania is the Treasury Building. 17th in Pennsylvania is what's called the Executive Office of the President of the U.S. 18th in Pennsylvania is the World Bank. And 19th in Pennsylvania is the International Monetary Fund. So it's only 2 blocks from the president's office to tell the IMF what to do. You don't even need to text it. It takes 30 seconds to walk across the street to say, veto that country's program. And that's still power. But it's power that is fading. It's fading in part because of the BRICS. Because the BRICS are saying, we don't need to be under the thumb of a U.S. empire. That's what President Lula said when he was hosting the BRICS this summer, and Trump put on a tariff on Brazil because he didn't like a court proceeding against the preceding president who had tried to make a coup. And so he put on a penalty tariff, and President Lula said, we don't need an emperor, and we're not going to succumb to this kind of pressure. So the BRICS, of which you are an esteemed member, the S in BRICS, remember the 10 BRICS countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and now Egypt and Ethiopia, United Arab Emirates, Iran, and Indonesia. The 10 BRICS countries have 46% of the world population. Thank you. And 41% of the world GDP. And they can look at the G7 and say, who are you? And that's what they're doing. So this is the new phase of geopolitics. The world is not falling apart, but the US and Europe are having a tantrum. That's different. And the world is not fragmenting. The US is isolating itself. It doesn't even go to the parties anymore. It puts on tariffs. It says, you can't have our market. And the rest of the world says, okay, because your market's not so important for us. And Trump said, okay, we're going to punish you, China, for being so successful, by the way. We're going to put 100% tariff on you. And the next hour, China said, okay, we're putting 120% tariff on you. And then Trump said, okay, we're going to restrict any advanced chips going to you. And China said, okay, no rare earth magnets. And the U.S., within a half an hour, said, "We surrender." By the way, I had no idea there was anything called a rare earth magnet before all of this happened. So I had to ask ChatGPT what it was exactly. It turns out it's absolutely essential for all manufacturing, for automotive, for military, and so on. And China makes them. The U.S. doesn't make them. And so turned out the U.S. learned a bit of a lesson there. Again, yet another reason why Donald Trump is staying home. So this is why we're at such a historic juncture. But the world is really not fragmenting. It's remaining open and it's trading. It's just that one corner of the world is very surly. The part that used to dominate just can't figure out what's going on. And Trump is, of course, trying to flex the military muscles in a disgusting way. The U.S. is still militarily powerful, no doubt about it. The wars in Ukraine and Gaza are imperial wars. The war in Ukraine came because the United States said after the collapse of the Soviet Union, we'll move all our military bases up to the Russian border. And by the way, in 1990, when Germany was reunifying and President Gorbachev was president still of the Soviet Union, the United States promised President Gorbachev, if you, the Soviet Union, agree to the reunification of Germany, which had been divided after World War II in the Cold War, and required the Soviet approval because that was how World War II ended by treaty in 1990. The only real treaty that ended World War II was in 1990. They needed the Soviet agreement. And to get the Soviet agreement, the United States said to President Gorbachev, we promise NATO won't move 1 inch eastward. Not 1 inch. And if you want all the documentary record of that, go to a website called National Security Archive of George Washington University, and go to a website that is called What Gorbachev Heard, and you'll find 42 documents or so that say all of what I just said, that the U.S. promised NATO would never enlarge. But as soon as the Soviet Union ended and the United States said, we're all alone in this, then they started exactly what they promised they wouldn't do, which was eastward enlargement of NATO. And that's why there's the war in Ukraine. It's a disgrace. And it is killing the Ukrainians. And it is part of the famous adage of Henry Kissinger, which you may recall, that to be an enemy of the United States is dangerous, but to be a friend is fatal. Ukraine said, we'll be a friend, and now they're dying because of that. Because they said, okay, NATO enlarged. The United States said, we have your back. And probably 2 million Ukrainians have been killed or gravely wounded in this completely unnecessary and reckless war. And the United States is doing the same with Israel in Gaza. And let me thank you, South Africa, for standing up for justice. It was very brave, very right, very precise to launch the International Court of Justice case on Israel's violation of the 1948 Genocide Convention. The ICJ takes too long to rule, but the evidence that South Africa brought on behalf of the whole world is absolutely right and compelling. So we're in the age of rebalancing, and that's why I liked the title, Reclaiming the Future, because it's not only claiming the future, it is reclaiming what should have been. Had Adam Smith been listened to because he was very decent, this would not have been 200 years of imperialism. This would have been open trade, exchange of ideas, exchange of knowledge. There would have been development in all parts of the world. The imperial age delayed that terribly. I don't have to recount any of that for you here, especially. But I would just say that, to my mind, the greatest crime of imperialism, and imperialism is filled with criminality of the worst kind, but the greatest crime of imperialism, in my view, is the denial of knowledge and of education to the people. Because the basic idea of imperialism, of course, is plunder and extraction and domination. And the basic mechanism of that is to disempower the people. And the most basic empowerment of people, individually and as societies, is knowledge. It is exactly what you say, sapientia. It is knowledge for the people is the most powerful way to advance. It's the essential standard of economic and social development, and it's precisely what the imperialists denied. And by the way, when imperialism ended in Africa, when you looked at the scene, and there's a fascinating study by UNESCO called Illiteracy in the World in 1950, which you can find online because this new organization, UNESCO, in the middle of the 20th century, made a study of worldwide illiteracy. Most of sub-Saharan Africa had illiteracy rates of more than 90%, some between 95 and 100%. That means that when independence came, there had been no education for the people, other than the tiniest exceptions. You know this. This was the mechanism of control. This has made every challenge a challenge of gaining knowledge and of spreading information as absolutely the core of reclaiming the future. So let me turn to the part after the colon of this title, and that is the role of universities in a geopolitically contested age. The role of the universities is the most fundamental institution of societal transformation for the future that we want. The future that we want is a future of sustainable development. Sustainable development means that the future should be prosperous, that yes, we don't reduce poverty, we end poverty. That's sustainable development goal number one. That we have social justice, that we attend to the environmental crises, which are extremely serious and worsening dramatically, and that we live in peace. That's what sustainable development means. Prosperity, social justice, environmental sustainability, and peace and cooperation. In my view, the universities are the central institutions for helping to guide society to the future that we need and the future that we want, to mobilize the knowledge for society on behalf of sustainable development, meaning a prosperous and fair and sustainable future for society. The transformations that we need to achieve that future are rather complicated. We need to ensure, even in poor places, universal access to quality education. You are in the forefront of that design. How to use online learning, how to use the new multimedia methods, how to use artificial intelligence, how to use digital technologies to spread knowledge everywhere. In my view, this is Africa's most important aim and challenge, that the next 20 years should be mass education of quality across this continent. You have the largest cohort of young people in the world. Educate them, train them. Don't let any child lose out. Don't let any government say, we don't have the means, we can't afford this, let's solve this problem, how to make this financing work. But no child is going to have a future that we want for that child if they don't have a quality education. And we need transformations in the same way for universal access to health care and public health, the area where Sonia, my wife, has been working for so many years and working in villages across Africa, showing that at very low cost, by deploying digital technologies, by using the advances as they come, AI or telemedicine and so forth, it's possible to expand access dramatically to health care at very low cost because the tools become better and better. We need to move to a zero carbon energy system because the burning of the fossil fuels is what's causing the dramatic and accelerating climate change. And there again, Donald Trump was paid for by the oil industry to be put in the White House, so we don't ever know whether he knows anything. But when he says that climate change is a hoax, which he said from the rostrum of the General Assembly, the main reason he's saying it is not even his ignorance, which is unbounded sometimes, but because he was paid to say it by big oil lobbies. But what he's done is to say to China and to Africa and to Europe, you take the future. We'll just close up and deny reality. But this is a transformation that needs to be made. And we need to have advances in agronomy and in sustainable agriculture and land use. And for this continent, this is really essential. You have, of course, unique ecosystems, home to so many species, and they're under threat because of farmlands encroaching, deforestation, even collecting wood for charcoal when solar power would be vastly more effective and efficient. And so we need the transformation of the land use patterns for sustainability. And Africa is going to be welcoming hundreds of millions of people into the cities of Africa in the coming 30 years. And believe me, the rural areas are going to have a significant decline of population, if for no other reason than agriculture is going to be very substantially mechanized in the next 25 years. Robots are going to be doing a lot of the heavy labor. And that means people will be living in cities, and cities need infrastructure, they need design, they need not to get completely clogged up with congestion, they need public transport. I love cities that don't depend on private automobiles, by the way, but depend on public transport that enable walking and bicycling and active mobility, as it's called, but give options other than individual car ownership, because that's a very expensive path to development. So that's another transformation that is needed. And we are going to be in the digital world. And as we were coming up in the elevator, VC, I saw the sign for your program in information sciences, the Bachelor of Science in Information Sciences. That's a great skill, and it's a great program. And that is going to be transformative all over the continent as well. So what is the role of the universities? It is to train, to discover the pathways, to innovate, to incubate new businesses in all of those transformative areas, in education, in healthcare, in energy systems, in agronomy, in urban design, in e-governance. You should make all of those things, and your students should make those things. And the universities should be the great incubators of companies that go off and design new ways to do all of this. And I've learned, as I've mentioned in the last few days here, something I've advised governments all over the world for 40 years, actually, this year, because I began that activity actively in 1985 in Bolivia, and I've advised probably well over 100 governments since then. Governments don't think. I'm not dissing them, by the way. They need to implement. They need to make coalitions. They need to solve political problems. They need to build bases, not military bases, bases of support. But they don't have time to think. And it's not even their job. And it's not even their qualifications. So we should do the thinking for them, thank you. It's just a division of labor. I've worked really with very wonderful governments and wonderful politicians. They don't hold seminars and workshops and deliver papers and analyze and argue about the data. They don't have time for any of that. But if the university comes and says, we've done a thorough study of how to make efficient design of Pretoria, or how to convert this part of the country to renewable energy, then they can implement that. We can't implement anything, by the way, but we can come up with the right designs, the training, the logic, the technology, help the businesses. We are not the implementers, actually. I hope we're the educators, the thinkers. I hope that we can inspire young people, because it's their future, after all. And I hope that we can be practical and show the way forward. Now, one last word that I want to emphasize in that wonderful title that I was assigned, and that's solidarity. Solidarity applies to us as a community. I know that Unisa is a community, and it is 400,000 strong of students, which is absolutely remarkable, and a great tribute to the profound role of this institution. I want solidarity. I want solidarity across countries and across the world. And for Africa, solidarity for me means African unity, true African unity. African unity started as an organizational form in 1963. The United States, Britain, and France hated it. They don't want African unity. When they saw leaders that would unify like Patrice Lumumba, they killed them, or they overthrew them, because empires like divide and conquer. The colonial period left Africa with 54 or 55 countries, depending on how you count it. That's a lot. And each one by itself cannot achieve the future that it wants. It can't resist the diplomacy or the attacks on diplomacy by itself. It can't resist the pressures. It can't resist the financial squeeze. It can't resist the instabilities that come from a market that's too small. Unity is the key. Solidarity is the key. And also, this is why this university is so crucial, because you are not only the University of South Africa, you are a South African university all over Africa. So I'm reading Unisa as Universities of Africa, because you are not only the leader here, but you're a leader across the continent. And so on your own campuses and your connections with other universities around this continent, work together to pull the unity of knowledge, of education, of training, and of good advice to the national governments and to the empowerment of the African Union as a true union. And I want Africa to make the continental free trade area really work. I want this continent is the same size as India and China in population. Actually, a little bit bigger than China, probably just about the same with India right now. 1.5 billion people in Africa, 1.5 billion people in India, 1.4 billion people in China. They're the little one on the block. China ended its poverty in 40 years through good planning and this mass national scale. India is on the path of ending its poverty now. It's about 15 years behind China in the reforms that opened up that led to the rapid takeoff. It's time for Africa now, as this giant, as a continental scale economy, to be the era of takeoff. And that will come with a continental scale economy and a continental scale strategy. And that means solidarity. So I want to commend you for the wonderful role that you're playing. I would like to say that for me, the single most important investment for the next 20 years is to make sure that this is the fastest learning continent, that this is a continent that is filled with knowledge, filled with education everywhere. By the way, the adults, the children, this should be a time of the greatest advancement of learning and knowledge in Africa, and what you will learn will help light the whole world. Thank you very much.
That was the 2025 Unisa Founders Lecture, delivered in such an effervescent manner by Professor Jeffrey Sachs, renowned economist, author, public policy advisor, thought leader and luminary on poverty eradication and social justice, with many, many quips at world leaders, delivered with so much levity and energy. Thank you very much. There are many things you said, Professor. The more things change, they stay the same. But I think for us, what's really relevant with the story of China is what Professor referenced towards the end. Within a generation, China was able to lift 800 million people out of poverty through making all those interventions that he speaks about. So good policy matters, implementation matters, and not doing war matters. Focus on your focus, building and developing your economies, and don't get caught up in scraps around the world. And because of that, China now controls even 70% of the rare earths trade, which is now defining the new economy. So there's really something for us to think about there. In the interest of time, I'm going to ask our respondents to make their way to the stage. And perhaps let me just explain what I mean. The professor, as you know, is in demand from South Africa to the rest of Africa to the world, and so he has to leave us in less than an hour. So I'm going to ask that our respondents make their way to stage. Please make succinct interventions, and then we will take one round of questions and then close the evening off. If that's acceptable, we move on. Dr. Nombulelo Shange, sociology lecturer from the University of the Free State, please join us on stage. Alongside Professor Tshepo Madlingozi, also Commissioner at the South African Human Rights Commission, joined by Dr. Genevieve James, Deputy Director for Engaged Scholarship here at Unisa. Okay, it appears we don't really have microphones on stage. So what I will do to our respondents, I will ask you just to follow the leader and respond to the speech that's been given: solidarity, social justice, reclaiming futures, the role of universities in contested geopolitics. So we begin with you, Dr. Nombulelo Shange.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'd like to thank Prof. Buleng Nkambula, the VC, and her team for constantly figuring out ways to also center young people and women in these types of engagements. I think it's very important in the context that we exist in. So before I start, maybe just very briefly, because of time, my own positionality as a scholar is a decolonial scholar. I also consider myself a feminist scholar, and also a scholar that works quite a lot in African thought and African spirituality. And so it's from this context that I will deliver some of my remarks today. I find Prof. Sachs' discussion that he pulls from Adam Smith on rebalancing, and rebalancing through knowledge, through trade, and through openness, quite an important one. And while I was listening to him speak, I was reflecting on this in relation to where we are as South Africans, especially when it comes to openness. And it left me a little concerned and scared, because I see many parallels between the discussion that he gave about global politics, how the West has divided, has conquered, and has created conflict throughout the world. And I see us following a similar trajectory, especially as South Africans, and especially as a key player within the continent, where gradually we have moved towards readopting some of these colonial ideas and these boundaries that have been set up to divide us. I think we've seen this emerge through some of the xenophobic violence and attacks through structures like Operation Dudula, where people have been stripped of their humanity, where we've seen the emergence of almost pass-like systems re-emerge, where if you're not South African and you can't prove South Africanness, you are essentially not seen as a human being. And thinking about this in relation to Prof. Sachs' discussions around economy and the importance of us rising as a global power alongside other countries within the global south, I ask myself, are we not working against our own interest? Are we not eroding our own African ontology of Ubuntu? And I'm not talking about the whitewashed Rainbow Nation version of Ubuntu that has been sold to us as a way of forgetting the past. I'm talking about the Ubuntu that is instilled in the works of scholars like Makgobe Ramose, that says to us, Ubuntu is an act of constant service, it's an act of constant progress and process, and it's a way for us to reimagine who we are as a collective and not as individuals that are self-seeking. And so this is the context that I'm speaking on Ubuntu on. I think we have lost this version of Ubuntu. And I think in this emergence of xenophobic violence, in this trying to distinguish and separate ourselves from the rest of the continent, we might put ourselves at risk of being a part of this new world that Prof. Sachs so beautifully narrated and painted for us. I do find a little bit of discomfort with Prof. Sachs' discussion on sustainable development. There's the parts of sustainable development that I think we can all agree on. We all need gender equality. We all need healthcare. We all need many of the things that are articulated, particularly in the Sustainable Development Goals. But at the same time, sustainable development often feels like a top-down approach, where we as Africans must accept what the predominantly Western world has dictated for us. And this is where I'll close my remarks. I also wonder and question, because so much of what sustainable development encourages us to do is based on a type of reformist capitalism, and because capitalism in our context was ushered to us through coloniality, I wonder, can we actually move towards the sustainable development if it is based on a system that was built to violate, dismember, and essentially exterminate us?
Good evening. Thank you so much. We've been told that we've got about 5 minutes, so I won't speak for long. I just want to respond to 3 ideas that came from the talk. The first idea, this idea of rebalancing. The second idea is to start where the professor started, on Adam Smith and colonialism. But then the third one, to speak a little bit or respond a little bit to the question of the university. But I think the starting point is that this lecture is very timely, VC, because next year we are observing 30 years of our democracy, not democracy, 30 years of our constitution. And of course, the central value in the constitution is the idea of social justice. However, we need to start here to say there's a big disjuncture between constitutional promises and the reality on the ground. And I thought you were going to talk a little bit about that, Aus Lerato, which is that South Africa continues to be the most unequal country in the world. Land hunger and land injustice continues to be a big injustice in South Africa. Last week, my office launched a report on the state of education. And what we report does not make for good reading. It shows that at the basic education level, most of the schools in South Africa are not operating well, from infrastructure, overcrowding, issues of security, no enough teachers, and so forth. So the lack of equitable access to education continues to be a big challenge, even before we come to universities. Big, big challenge. I like where you started, Prof, with the idea that social justice, or this is how I understand it, social justice is a symptom, but the cause is the unfinished business of de-imperialism, the unfinished business of decolonization. Unless we understand that, we'll miss everything. Social justice or social injustice is the symptom, not the root cause of the issue. And of course, as the Chancellor of this university puts it, the global apartheid started in this long 1500th century. And therefore, when we talk about rebalancing, is it about rebalancing or is it about fundamentally ending this unfair world? That is a question that we need to debate. The second response that I want to put forward is on the opportunities that come with the diminution of American power. And of course, we see this power diminishing. America has withdrawn from UNESCO, has withdrawn from WHO, has withdrawn from Human Rights Council, so many bodies. Sanctions against ICJ judges is an opportunity. Have we taken that opportunity? I'm less optimistic about where we are as far as the African Union. The African Union was supposed to take this opportunity. Let's be very clear, the African Union is chronically dysfunctional. The African Union has failed to stop genocide in Sudan, the war in the DRC, and so forth and so forth. Where is the AU? BRICS, an opportunity that has not borne a lot of fruits. How do we reimagine BRICS? But then finally, the role of the university. This year marks 10 years of fees must fall. Or put differently, 10 years of fees not falling. So the universities themselves, as a side of contestation VC, as a side of social injustice in many universities, one statistic says 38% of students in our universities suffer from hunger, literal basic hunger. 38%, that's a lot. A study that came out 2 years ago, GBV in our universities. But also our universities have failed to make a transition away from neoliberalism and managerialism themselves. So when we say universities must contribute towards solidarity, towards social injustice, we need to say, how do we fundamentally rethink our universities? There's more to say, but just say, let me end it there. Thank you.
Good evening, Professor Sachs. So good to see you in person. I wrote so much, wondering when I will ever bump into you again. So welcome to this, the University of the Land, the University of South Africa. And Prof, I'd like you to know that not only are we the University of the continent, but we have our students and alumni all over the world. Over 1 million alumni have come from this university. Prof, I really like your attitude. You're really cool. You got this boomer thing about you. You've seen it all, you've done it all, and you have got things figured out. Me, on the other hand, I'm struggling. I'm really struggling. I feel the reverberations of fragmentation, even when you say there is no fragmentation. I also celebrate that you come from a free land, because you openly, you show your love for your president all the time. And that's beautiful. We also try to do that here, but we have to watch our backs as well. And so, Prof, for me, I realize that we're living in an Anthropocene age, this geological age defined by the profound impact of human behavior on the earth. We inhabit an era marked by the convergence of multiple crises: ecological collapse, political fragmentation, and moral disorientation. These crises compel us to ask deeper questions about the meaning and purpose of our lives in a world which seems increasingly fractured from our view. Our global reality is scarred by deep divisions, raging greed, rampant corruption, spiraling violence, social discord, and mounting inequalities that tear the fabric of our collective humanity. Despite the unprecedented interconnectedness of our time, we face obstacles that seem to be intractable, obstacles that hinder genuine cooperation and solidarity. You see, Prof, I'm a bit concerned when we find one boogeyman in the world to lament about. There are quite a few. And somehow, when we want to just focus on the one boogeyman, the rest get to go undercover and continue. So, what keeps us apart? Firstly, competing interests. Nations and groups that prioritize narrow self-gain, security, resources, economic growth over collective welfare. I am not as enthusiastic about the rise of a new global power. We've had enough. And so on the continent of Africa, we simply cannot be squeezed in the rise and fall of empires on either side of us. We have to fight for us to assert ourselves. This is the African continent. This is the African century. And I hope that we will not succumb to the rise of the East, but that we will continue to declare that we deserve to have a place in this global order, not as mentees, not under the perpetual tutelage of the West, but drawing from the spirit of Africa, the sun that warms our skin, the fruit that we eat that is so sweet on this continent. There are amazing things happening on this continent, and we simply cannot allow this talk of China and Russia to be the next ascendancy. Truly, it is our time, Prof. Sachs. This model of extraction thrives on dangerous misconception that the Earth's abundance is infinite and the environment can absorb limitless waste. For some, economic growth today by far outweighs planetary survival tomorrow. Wealthier nations and affluent consumers disproportionately drive ecological damage through high consumption, while climate-vulnerable economies bear the brunt and face extreme weather, resource depletion, and environmental collapse. Such is the urgency of our time. Unequal distribution leading to scarcity is often artificial, caused by systems led by human beings. This fuels resentment and deepens global inequality. Power imbalances, whether they come from the east, west, north, these seek to destroy our global and collective humanity. States seek regional ascendancy and global supremacy to secure influence. Military strength and economic control are deployed as power tools extraordinaire for asserting dominance. Wealthy nations still dominate the global institutions, precipitating mistrust and resistance. This after centuries of looting and pillaging under the guise of progress and development. Short-term political expediency deepen these divisions even further. Ideological divisions, differing governance models, cultural values, faith-based identities have become fertile ground for conflict, often exploited by malicious leaders and organizations. Structural inequalities and systemic oppression, patriarchy, racial supremacy, and neoliberal capitalism, not to mention the interesting breed we have these days of billionaire socialists that weaken the bonds of solidarity upon which collective progress depends. Broken promises in trade, and thank God we are finally, cutting ourselves from the bondage of aid. As Dembiso Moyo said, aid has been an unmitigated disaster for the African continent. On our continent, we simply cannot ignore the brutal legacies of colonization, slavery, and exploitation. These are the hellish legacies that perpetuate suspicion and mistrust. Our own Ndlovu Gatsheni warns that the worst form of colonization on the continent is the epistemological one, the colonization of the imagination and the mind hidden in the institutions and discourses that govern the modern world. Amidst this fragmenting global order, we have the universities that, as you said, are simply indispensable. The University of South Africa is a university of appreciable size, national and continental strategic significance, and at the core of our social function lies the need for critical reflection, intellectual engagement, and development collaboration that creates a more peaceful, stable, and equitable, just order. Now, since I've already been tapped to get off, I'd like to, since you're in South Africa, momentarily take you back to Chicago. And that was when the powerful words of William Rainey Harper, the former president of the University of Chicago, really resonated with me. He said, "It is the university that fights the battles of democracy. Its war cry being, come, let us reason together. No more polarization. Come, let us reason together. It is the university that in these latter days goes forth with buoyant spirit to comfort and give help to those who are downcast, taking up its dwelling in the very midst of distress. It is the university that, with impartial judgment, condemns in democracy the spirit of corruption, which now falls and lifts its head and brings scandal upon democracy's fair name. Our universities must rise to this ideal, becoming vibrant spaces where freedom of thought flourishes, where diverse knowledge systems coexist, and where solidarity, true solidarity, replaces division." I will leave it there. Thank you so much, sir.
All right, thank you very much. I'll go in the reverse order in how we've heard the responses from Dr. Genevieve James, who is the Deputy Director here at Unisa. Before her was Professor Tsepo Madlingozi, a commissioner of the South African Human Rights Commission, and then kicking off the respondents were Dr. Nombulelo Shange. And I think when I listened to the speeches on inclusion in public policy, on shared prosperity and justice and fairness in how policies are crafted, implemented, and how we resource public institutions, to remembering that we have been loaned planet Earth, and however we manage our politics and our power, we have to make sure that we are responsible in the way in which we extract resources from the Earth. So I think actually it's the essence of sustainability, Prof. It is people, planet, and shared prosperity. Thank you very much for those interventions. Now again, I did say we have significant time constraints. And so I'm going to use my latitude as the facilitator right now. I'm not going to be popular, but it's a risk I'm willing to take. We're going to take 4 questions because there's 4 sections to this auditorium. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's it. And when you do pose your question, please, no preambles. We know Jeffrey Sachs is a rock star economist. Do not tell us. We know it. We've heard it. Ask the question. Yes, sir. Question over there. And over here, yes, please stand up. Please stand up and remain standing so that the microphone reaches you fast. Over here, please stand at the back there. I see you. And the final question, this side of the room. Yes, ma'am, that's it. We've got it. 2 men, 2 women. It's parity. Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Matome Selepe. Prof, my question is simply on this. We have the UN, United Nations. But for me, the problem is with these permanent members of the UN. We only have 5 in 2025. And, when you look at what Israel has done to Palestinians, and you think that they've got an ally who can take a veto power in a resolution that says Israel is committing genocide in Palestine. So my question is simple. Why don't we have democracy in the UN? Why don't the majority, if they say this resolution is supported by the majority of the members of the member countries, why should we have veto power in this age and time? Thank you.
Fantastic. So UN Security Council reform. Yes, sir. Do you have a microphone? Okay, as it's coming to you, do you have one? Yes. No? Yes? You've got a microphone on you? Please use it, ma'am. Go ahead.
All right, thank you for that. So I've got one question and maybe one comment. Number 1, is the university willing to fight for the knowledge of the hard knowledge? What I mean is, there's a lot of bogus institutions. There's currently a lot of private colleges that claim to be accredited, but they are not. Is the University of South Africa willing to stand up and put all the other universities to fight for true knowledge and true education by maybe indicating a policy for these people to close down? That's number 1.
Okay.
Number 2, the last one. In the new administration that is going to come in 2029, should we be handed a minister of education that, as the education system, we don't think this person is right for us? Is the University of South Africa willing to take the first step and the first stand to say we don't want this person to lead us in the education system? Thank you.
Okay. Not quite sure how the VC and her team would respond to bogus colleges, the integrity of education, but also, can you have lobby power to say there's a way in which we want to be led?
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Muckleneuk, economics lecturer from the University of South Africa. I want to comment to you, Prof, when you communicated about urbanization. Yes, we have an urbanization issue in South Africa. The effect of urbanization refers to what Dr. Shenge spoke about, that some organizations are prohibiting people to access free public health services. Now, as a Unisa employee myself, I have to say I pride myself with our university as an open e-learning university. We are able to reach students who are coming from the rurals of the rural universities. This year, I was able to meet a lot of my students. They graduate, they walk on this stage. So I believe we are solving some of the urbanization issue through e-learning. However, the issue that stands most is the financial issue. Okay. Now my question is, how can an African child without financial support access higher education?
Fantastic. So democratizing education and making sure that money is not prohibitive. Yes, sir.
Good day, everybody. My name is Madikizela-Mandela, international architecture economist at the National Treasury. I just have 2 questions. You basically talk about solidarity. Can the Global South realistically build collective bargaining power inside the G20 when countries like India, Saudi Arabia, and Brazil are increasingly aligning themselves with Western interests? And again, the last question is, given the global focus on climate change, debt sustainability, and inclusive growth, as shown in the G20 and 30 meetings in recent years.
Yeah.
How do you somewhat see African universities as a whole contributing to these debates beyond teaching and research? Thanks.
Thank you so much. Okay, so how do we build consensus in international organizations? Professor Sachs, the podium is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much for wonderful questions, and especially to the respondents also for wonderful observations and responses. I want to say a couple of things about what the respondents noted. Sustainable development is not capitalism. It's not a system. I just want to make that clear. It truly is not a system. Sustainable development, for me, is an idea that says that we want a future that is prosperous, fair, environmentally sustainable, and peaceful. That doesn't define the system to achieve that. That defines aims. The system is actually, first of all, a complex system. It's not a system of state control or pure markets or capitalism or socialism. It is going to be a mixed system that will differ across the world as well. China's system, if you analyze it, what China calls socialism with Chinese characteristics, is a complex system. It has markets, it has private ownership, it has state-owned enterprises, it has planning, it has open trade, it has private innovation, it has public innovation. It's not anything you would find in a textbook, which is why many of my colleagues have deemed it to be impossible, because it's not in their textbook. But it's not only not impossible, it's there and it's working. It's rather ingenious, and it has been very successful in many ways. I don't know if it's socialism, by the way, but I do know that it's Chinese characteristics, because a lot of this is formed from specific institutions in China. But it's very different from the US scene, and in many ways much more effective in particular areas. And so I, of course, agree with you. It's not a system defined. Of course, I'm also absolutely in agreement and aware that there are attempts to define a uniformity. It used to be called the Washington Consensus, for God's sake. That means a consensus from 15th Street to 19th Street, not a worldwide consensus. It meant American power. So that's not at all what we should be aiming for. I couldn't agree more with that point. And I complain about the IMF and the World Bank daily. If anyone is here, happy to speak with you from those institutions, happy to speak with you later, and to complain, because I don't believe in the cookie-cutter approach. And when I read the documents of these institutions, sometimes I have no sense at all of what country I'm reading about, because it could be any country. It is find and replace the name. The same statements made, very bland, very illogical in my view, not at all responsive to the actual circumstances. So the first point I wanted to make is that at least the way that I like to use the term sustainable development is not the imposition of a system. It is the idea of the future that we want to build. And then and that's our job and the job of history, the job of culture, to help build institutions that are effective and that can work. A second point is related. I believe we are in the post-hegemonic world. By that, I mean, it's not that China is going to replace the United States in global hegemony, because China won't replace the United States. We are in a truly multipolar world, and China will not dominate the world. The United States is delusional in even thinking that it once did, but it had a lot of power, but it was delusional to think that that was true hegemony in some sense. Britain came even closer, and it did use its imperial power when it had it uniquely to beat up as many places as it could. There's a book, by the way, a very nice little book called The 23 Countries That Britain Never Invaded, meaning that it invaded the 100 plus of the rest, and it shows a map of the few places in the world that Britain never invaded. It's not very many, actually. But China's not the new hegemon, and one reason for that is that India is going to rise in power, and Africa is going to rise in power. And so this is not the idea that Africa becomes the victim of one power replacing another. It's not in the cards. And demographically, it's actually interesting to understand. Right now, China has 1.4 billion people. Africa, about 1.5 billion people. At mid-century, Africa will have about 2.5 billion people, and China will have declined to about 1.2 billion people. Because China's peaked, the birth rates are so low, the population is coming down. By 2100, of course, this is not a forecast, it's a mechanical extrapolation. But on the current trends, the UN medium forecast is that Africa will have 3.7 billion people, and China less than 800 million people. So China will decline sharply. Africa will be around 35% of the world population. East Asia, around 18% of the world population. Don't worry about Chinese hegemony. They will be good partners. They will be very helpful as partners. They will help provide financing and technology in a useful way. But this is not one hegemon replacing another hegemon. But please, just for Africa's sake, you can't do this 54 times. This needs to be done at a continental scale. So that's really the point that I'm trying to emphasize. Let me say a few words about the United Nations, where by the way, they owe me $25. Because for 25 years, I worked for $1 a year, and they never paid me. So they owe me $25, but I still love the place. I like very much the idea of international law and the peaceful resolution of conflicts and the UN Charter. And I regard it as the greatest contribution by the greatest president of the United States, Franklin Roosevelt, who I think was one of the few presidents of the United States who was outstanding in his morality and in his vision and in his political capacity. He's my favorite of all American presidents. I don't have many American president favorites, by the way, and I don't deny the fact that there are many scoundrels all over the place. But as an American, I get to pick on American presidents. So this is also partly my philosophy, which is complain about your own country. It's a good thing to do. It's Jesus' advice, actually, which is why do you point to the mote in the other person's eye when you have the beam in your own eye? I think we need to take responsibility for our own countries to help clean up the act. I don't like Americans pointing out the foibles or failures of other countries. I find that mostly malicious, especially when the beam is not only in one eye, it's in both eyes in America. And so I really actually just believe that it's partly my responsibility to focus on the American problems because they create so many problems for everyone else also. So that just to explain that. But I really like the UN, but it doesn't work very well. And it doesn't work very well for one big reason which we should understand. Global governance is a new idea in human history. We've never had it before. The first time it was attempted, even partially attempted, and it was not really global governance then, was the League of Nations. That was 1 century ago. It didn't work, but that was the age of high European imperialism also, so it wasn't really global governance. The UN is really the first attempt at global governance with sovereignty of most of the world. And it was a completely, well, it wasn't completely new invention. It was to supersede the failed League of Nations. But the UN Charter and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights were inventions at the end of World War II. And the UN was really mainly the invention of Franklin Roosevelt, and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is a great contribution of Eleanor Roosevelt, who was also one of the finest leaders in American history. Absolutely remarkable couple. But the idea of the UN in Franklin Roosevelt's mind was different from what happened, because he really thought, and he was gifted, that there would be an age of cooperation at the end of World War II. And that he, because he was so gifted, would get along with Stalin, would get along with Churchill, would get along with the Chinese leadership at the time. It was Chiang Kai-shek in 1945. And that this would be not a conflict of major powers, but actually a cooperation. And the UN would give sovereignty to each nation of the world. There were 51 at the time. There are now 193. But that the great powers wouldn't be at each other's throats, and that the veto was not going to be the compelling issue of the United Nations. And the saddest part for the UN is that Franklin Roosevelt died on April 12th, 1945, at the age of 63, because there wasn't anti-hypertension medicine at the time. And so he dropped dead of a stroke as a still young man. And his vision was not realized because America went into military mode and anti-Soviet mode almost immediately. Of course, Stalin, he could have done better, but the United States could have done a lot better also. And so we went into global confrontation quite early. And the UN wasn't well designed for that because the major powers were each given a veto, but it wasn't expected in Roosevelt's mind that that would be paralysis. What he expected is that there would be normally cooperation, but it turned into a lot of paralysis. And the other major problems of the UN is lots of diplomacy, not much money or power. So it's not only the great power confrontation, but the UN is a lot better at stating goals than it is at implementing them. And the Sustainable Development Goals, to my mind, are really good goals. And they're really global. They weren't imposed, by the way, on anybody. The governments negotiated them over 3 years. And the wonderful Ambassador Kamau of Kenya, together with his counterpart from Ireland, David Donoghue, were the two ambassadors that led a committee of 193 countries in deliberating on these goals. So the goals are not imposed by the United States or imposed by anybody. They were really negotiated. And they're very nice goals, by the way. Nothing wrong with them. But they spent almost no time on how to actually achieve them. So they stated nice goals. But the UN is not an implementing body by and large. Of course, I don't want to insult anyone at the UN, which I love, because they work very hard in the Food and Agriculture Organization, the World Health Organization, but there's no funding there. UNESCO can't provide the funds for a poor country to achieve quality education. WHO can't fund the healthcare systems. And that is part of what the problem is. We need to make the UN more effective. And there are two ways to make the UN more effective. One is to make the major powers that have a veto right now behave themselves. It's not impossible. The United States doesn't have to behave like a 4-year-old. It doesn't. It could act like a grown-up. It happened once in a while. And if it happened once in a while, it can happen again. Donald Trump is a passing phenomenon. He is not a definition of America. And if you want my guess, Mamdani is our future, not Trump. So I think that, so we could actually get back to cooperation. That would help a lot. And then the second is to make the UN more effective. And that should be based on global taxation, for example, of international financial transactions, carbon dioxide emissions, international aviation, international shipping, that give an adequate flow of funds to actually do the things that we need to do in this world. I find it absurd and tragic that the core annual budget for the IMF, for the United Nations, is $3 billion a year, when the New York City budget is $118 billion a year. We can do better than that. And anyway, I'm not going to dwell on that, except to say it is part of our job to fix the UN, not to give up on it, not to be cynical about it, to understand that in historical terms, it's still a baby, it's 80 years old, but it's really 80 years in 80,000 years of human governance. We're still in the early stage of making the global governance work. Finally, let me say a word about democratizing education. This is what Africa needs to show the world how to do. Unisa is a very powerful force for that. You're already doing that in remarkable ways. I believe that the systems that we get from AI, from digital connectivity, from online resources, will greatly empower the democratization of education in the years ahead. I want us to experiment with new ways to deliver. I like many things. I like lecturing online with connected classes, for example, where campuses all over the world are joining in a conversation together. This is, to my mind, the most basic thing we can do in a connected world is to connect young people together so that they know they're part of a world, and the active education is that way. And I have often arranged, it's been now almost 20 years that I've been doing this, 10 or 15 or 20 universities simultaneously in the room together in Zoom or whichever means we have. But I believe that we are, with new tools and new approaches and a need, And I think Unisa is really singularly equipped to help lead the world in this. I would encourage you, this is the purpose of this university, it is the ethos of this university, it is the practice of this university to democratize education. And I would like to do anything I can to help you to expand your mission, expand the reach, inspire other universities around the world, and to use the new tools that we have as creatively as possible, because I think wonderful things will happen with education in the years ahead. I think we have new ways of teaching and learning that are extraordinarily exciting, and I really do count on you for showing the way. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for those considered responses, Professor Sachs. All right, we've got 2 more items on the formal agenda, and my watch says 20:48, which effectively means we've got 10 minutes before Professor Sachs needs to leave. So I'm going to just really implore those involved in the next part of this event to just be mindful of time. And so a week ago, the Chancellor of the university, a political luminary, former head of state, President Thabo Mbeki, presented the Calabash Awards, awards given to people who are really distinguished in their respective careers, and it's across various disciplines, economics to music, people who have really just excelled. So with that in mind, I'd like to invite the chairperson of the Unisa Council, Ndate Dan Musia, joined by the VC Puleng Linkabula, to just come and officiate this part of the program.
I guess, given my height, I might not necessarily need to have that. Thank you, Program Director Melerato Mbele, the Principal and the Vice Chancellor of Unisa, Professor Linkabula, our distinguished keynote speaker, Professor Jeffrey Sachs, fellow members of Council present here today, distinguished ambassadors and other members of the diplomatic community, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. It is a profound honor to stand before you tonight at this prestigious 2025 Founders Lecture, an occasion that binds us together in celebration of thought leadership, academic excellence, public engagement, and power of knowledge to transform societies. This evening carries a special significance because it invites us not only to reflect on the big global questions, but also to recognize individuals whose life of work help us to imagine and actively build a more just, humane, and sustainable world. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we take advantage of this occasion to honor one of such individuals, our guest of honor, Professor Jeffrey D. Sachs. I have a privilege of presenting the Unisa Chancellor's Calabash Award, an honor that is reserved for individuals whose scholarship, leadership, and service exemplify the highest ideals of humanity, and whose work resonates deeply with Unisa's mission of an African university shaping futures of humanity. I guess Professor Jeffrey David Sachs needs a little introduction for those who may not necessarily know what he does. He is widely regarded as one of the most influential thinkers of our time. His work has shaped global debates on poverty eradication, sustainable development, climate justice, economic policy, and global cooperation. He's not simply an economist or an academic. He's an educator of extraordinary reach. Someone who has used the classroom, the lecture hall, the global podium, and the corridors of international diplomacy as platforms for teaching, challenging, and inspiring the world. As we reflect on the theme of this year's Founders Lecture, solidarity, social justice, and reclaiming futures, the role of universities in contested geopolitics, we are reminded that these are not abstract concepts for Professor Sachs, as you have witnessed. They are commitments that have defined his career over the 4 decades. He embodies the idea of outstanding educator in the fullest sense. He's an educator who teaches the world to see the structural roots of inequality, to confront uncomfortable truths about global power, to fight for dignity for every person. He's an educator who uses evidence to illuminate pathways out of despair and who brings clarity to issues that often feels overwhelming in their scale. He's an educator who reminds us that ideas are not meant to remain in the books or journals. They are meant to move, to influence policy, to change societies, and to better human lives. Professor Sachs has long insisted that universities are not passive observers of global crises, as he has shared earlier. They are agents of change. They are moral institutions with a responsibility to reproduce knowledge and knowledge that empowers. They are institutions that do not exclude, that liberates, that oppresses, not oppresses, that advances justice, and that simply progress. This conviction resonates powerfully with Unisa colleagues. Unisa's own identity as an African university committed to widening access, decolonizing knowledge, and contributing to global scholarship from the vantage point of our continent's experience and aspirations. His work has inspired a generation of scholars and policymakers to rethink development beyond narrow economic metrics, to center human well-being, environmental stewardship, and equitable global partnerships. His voice has been instrumental in shaping frameworks such as the Millennium Development Goals and the Sustainable Development Goals, which continue to guide nations in creating more inclusive and sustainable societies. But beyond all these global achievements, what stands out most in his unwavering belief in the potential of education to shape futures. And for this reason, tonight, we recognize him not merely as a global economist or a public intellectual, but as an outstanding educator. A teacher whose classroom is the world, whose influence transcends borders, and whose scholarship inspires hope. Professor Sachs, your presence here this evening signals a deep alignment of values between yourself and the University of South Africa. You remind us that intellectual work is not about prestige, but about purpose. Not about reputation, but about responsibility. And not about personal accomplishment, but about collective upliftment. It is therefore my honor, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of our Chancellor, the Council, and the entire Unisa community, to present to you with the Unisa Chancellor's Calabash Award in recognition of your extraordinary contributions as an educator, as a scholar, and a global advocate for justice, equality, and sustainable development. May this Calabash, Professor, an African symbol of wisdom, nourishment, and shared humanity, serve as a reminder that your work continues to inspire us and that your voice remains vital in shaping a more equitable world. Congratulations, Professor. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much to the Chair of Council and also VC Puleng Lengabula, and for just creating a moment because the award was announced last week at the Chancellor's Awards by President Mbeki himself. All right, we have literally 2 minutes to spare, and so I'm going to request Professor S.R. Maganu, Vice Principal for Institutional Development, to, if you can, give us the briefest vote of thanks, and then we can allow Professor Sachs his exit.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening to all of you. At the onset of the proceedings, the Vice-Chancellor, with her beautiful voice, welcomed us. And she literally did what my forebears instruct, that Saholamuing lebewa ke monghai, which simply means, as the principal holds, she's the one who has the prerogative to dictate the seating arrangement when welcoming the visitors. But then she has instructed me that at the end of the proceedings, I should remind you that it is now time to go home. As we conclude the proceedings, I want to believe that we all had enriching, thought-provoking, and informative time. But the fact of the matter is that we can never have sufficient time to address all systematic, structural, and historical issues that must be confronted if we are to create a world in which individuals are not marginalized on the basis of the color of their skin, place of origin or residence, socioeconomic positioning, age, gender, ability, religion, or any other marker shaped by inequality and discrimination, particularly as we work to build a more just, inclusive, and sustainable future for generations yet to come. As we bring this significant and inspiring gathering to a close, it is my honor to extend our heartfelt gratitude to everyone who made this evening a great success. To all our distinguished guests and attendees, thank you for honoring us with your presence, your time, and your engagement. Your participation affirms the importance of the conversations we are cultivating at the University of South Africa. To start off with, the Chairperson of Council, Dr. Dan Mosia, thank you very much also for assisting the Chancellor in presenting the Calabash Award to Professor Jeffrey Sachs. And also we want to appreciate members of Council who are present together with members of the management committee of the university. We express our sincere appreciation for your leadership, steadfast vision, and unwavering support. We truly appreciate that together we can make Unisa a safe space for constructive engagements and an institution where ideas can be exchanged openly, respectfully, and with a shared commitment to building a better society. Thank you for embodying President Nelson Mandela's steadfast belief that education is the great engine of personal development. It is through education that the daughter of a peasant can become a doctor, that the son of a mine worker can become the head of the mine, that the child of a farm worker can become the president of a great nation. We also extend our profound gratitude to the dignitaries, members of the diplomatic corps, government partners, esteemed academics, and representatives of institutions who joined us this evening. Your presence enriches our collective mission of creating and realizing the Africa we want. Allow me also to thank the program director, Mele Mbele, for leading these proceedings seamlessly and in the most astute manner. You are truly appreciated, Madam. Our appreciation also goes to the sign language interpreters, Me Tuli Zigalala and Me Nontlantla Ndaba, for ensuring full accessibility and inclusivity of the proceedings. Your contribution embodies the values we hold dearly as a university, the values committed to equity and justice. You are doing excellent work, which we truly appreciate. To Professor Jeffrey Sachs, words elude me to adequately appreciate the wisdom and the deep insights you shared with us this evening in your erudite lecture. The excellent manner this lecture was delivered demonstrates your superior ability and high level of scholarship to challenge your audience to shift the boundaries as they create new meanings and understanding of who they are and the roles they play or ought to be playing in society. We are going back to our homes as people challenged to deal with the limiting and compromising context that humanity often finds itself in. Our stereotypic assumptions and pathways have been illuminated to be more humane. We are truly delighted and highly appreciative of this seminal lecture that you presented to us. To our respondents and discussants, Professor Tsepo Mandlingozi, Commissioner at the South African Human Rights Commission, and Dr. Nombulelo Shange, Sociology Lecturer at the University of the Free State, we thank you for your thoughtful and incisive reflections. Your contributions grounded the evening's intellectual exchange in both South African and global realities. We are proud of you and grateful for your engagements. We also thank all those who participated in the question and answer engagements to enrich the dialogue that we had. Please know that you are deeply appreciated. Our gratitude also extends to the organizing team, the protocol teams, technical and production staff, communications units, and all support personnel whose hard work is often done behind the scenes. Thank you very much for making this event seamless, dignified, and memorable. To the entire Unisa community, students, staff, academics, and partners, thank you for upholding the spirit and purpose of this great university. But as we taper to the final end, it is very important that we express our gratitude to our Principal and Vice Chancellor, Professor Buleleng Kabula, for giving a welcoming address at the onset of the proceedings, and also to introducing the guest speaker. Your leadership, Vice Chancellor, continues to inspire the Unisa community and position the university at the forefront of continental transformation. We are gathered here today because of your perseverance, your strategic foresight, and your unwavering commitment to academic excellence and global engagement. I'm wondering. I just wanted to conclude by reflecting on the book that a colleague of ours has written, entitled Soshanguve Paremiology, a multilingual approach when I conclude, Vice Chancellor. This book has been authored by Professor Mwepe, and espoused in the book is what is called Sipitori. And one of the concepts that is touted is relevant to say, Warezamela, Vice Chancellor. You are actually doing well, and we want to thank you very much. I'm actually being intimidated and pressured, but nonetheless, we are truly, truly grateful that we had this beautiful event. And to make sure that I remain inclusive, let me thank even those who did nothing and have done it very well. Thank you.
I promise you, if you ask my friends, they say I'm a nice person. Not always, but sometimes.
Yeah. Can I just say something? Because you pressured me, I forgot to acknowledge Dr. James. All of the best to you. It is the crisis that you caused.
Let me tell you, I am America in this story. Okay, in the interest of time, unfortunately, we do have to close off the evening, and there are valid reasons why this is so. Otherwise, we're delaying Professor Sachs, and it would be on our heads. So this is what I request. Can everybody stay seated, except for members of council, the VC, and Dr. Sachs and Professor Sachs, as they make their way out. Can we... just as we say goodbye, I wanted to announce, Professor Sachs, you said a lot today, but whilst you were giving your speech, Reuters and SABC News reported that President Ramaphosa was just giving an address early this evening, a joint address with the European Union, and apparently the Americans have sent a notice requesting if they can please participate in the G20. And so with those words, thank you very much to the esteemed Dr. Jeffrey Sachs, Dr. Sonia Sachs. If everybody can remain seated, I will tell you what happens next. Could I ask the VC and Council to make their exit? definitely deserve another applause. So as they make their exit, may I take this opportunity to say thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. I know some of you have come through from Johannesburg, Ekurhuleni, other cities, and so we really recognize how special this Founders Lecture was, how important it was, how esteemed it was, and we don't take your gracing this event lightly. Before you take your leave, we really would like to invite you to just enjoy some refreshments, perhaps as you reflect on the lecture, get to know one another, and refreshments have been provided. This is what we'd like to do, just so that there's an orderly exit, because there's only 2 entries and exits here in the ZK Matthews Auditorium. So I believe when you came in, you were given a ribbon. Were you given a ribbon? Or a band? Okay. So this is how it's going to be. Firstly, look out for the ushers. They are ready to help you in case my instructions don't make sense to you. But everything depends on the wristband you are wearing. If you are wearing a yellow wristband, refreshments are being served to you at the Mpebatu dining hall. It's on the 3rd level. So if you're wearing a yellow wristband, Mpebatu. Perhaps I should ask anybody wearing a yellow wristband, perhaps now's the time to start making your exit. If you are wearing a red wristband, refreshments are being served for you in the Philadelphia restaurant on the 3rd floor. Red for Philadelphia. If you're wearing an orange wristband, halls on the 2nd floor. Halls on the 2nd floor if your wristband is orange. And if your wristband is lime. Now lime and yellow look the same, but Tshwane. If your
Outstanding Educator Award.
Lime is like a mix of green and yellow. Your refreshments are being served in Khorong building. The Khorong building